good morning, everyone. And today we are going to start. We are going to start about different. Yes. So, good morning, everyone. Today we are going to start about different, approaches and methods in language. As we know that method in English is very important. So now we are just giving introduction about teaching approaches and teaching methods. So teaching approach, it is a set of principles. We are talking about some set of principles and their beliefs and their ideas about the nature of learning, and which is translated into the classroom. Now we are having approaches in language. And now we are just discussing about some principles. So in teaching approach, some principles are very important. So it is a set of principles and their beliefs and their ideas about the nature of learning, which is translated into the classroom. So now we are teacher and we are just we are just taking classes of student. So the most important thing is translation and translated into the class. So now, teaching strategy, it is a long-term plan of action. Your teaching here we are discussing some strategies, some method. So it is a long-term plan of action designed to achieve a particular goal. So here we just want to get particular goal, and it is a long-term plan of action designed to achieve a particular goal. So this is a introduction part of this is introduction part. These are introduction part of method. So it is a set of principles, beliefs, or ideas about the nature of learning, which is translated into the classroom. Now, teaching strategy, it is a long-term plan of action designed to achieve a particular goal. Next is yes, teaching method. So it is a systematic way of doing something. Method is something systematic. Something something is systematic. It is a systematic way of doing something. It is a systematic way of doing something. It implies an orderly, logical arrangement of steps. It is more procedural, and teaching technique. It is a well defined procedure used to accomplish a specific activity or task. Here we are just discussing about some techniques, teaching technique. So in teaching techniques, it is a well defined procedure used to accomplish a specific activity or task. So if we discuss about some method in teaching, so it is a systematic way of doing something. It implies an orderly logical arrangement of steps. It is more procedural. Then after examples. So examples of teaching approaches. So these are some examples in teaching. So first of all, teacher centered, learner centered, subject matter centered, teacher dominated, banking approach, discipliner, individualistic, direct guided, and learner centered and learner centered, and interactive, constructivist, integrated, collaborative, and the dialect. So now teacher centered approach. So first of all, we can understand here we are just discussing about the teacher centered. So why a teacher is centered in approach? Why teacher is centered in method? So the teacher is perceived to be the only reliable source of information. The teacher is perceived to be the only reliable source of information, in contrast to the learner centered approach. So teacher, the teacher is perceived to be the only reliable source of information. As we know that teacher is just like a source of information. In contrast to here we are just contrasting to the learner centered approach. So now Learner center approach means student. So in learner center approach we will discuss about the in which it is premised on the belief that the learner is also an important resource because he or she to know something and is therefore capable of sharing something. So you know very well, if we talk about the learner centered approach, so learner is just like they are just understanding, they are just getting what teacher is what teacher is giving them information, and a teacher just like a source of information. So a learner in which it is premised to the belief that learner is also an important resource because he or she to know something, he want to get something, he or she knows to know something and therefore capable of sharing something, and they are very eagerly, they are all learner are eagerly want to know something. And now subject matter centered, so this is subject matter centered means approach, this is also approach subject matter gains primacy over that of the learner. Teacher dominator approach, very well, teacher dominator approach. In this approach only the teacher's voice is heard, she is the sole dispenser of information. Dominated part of a teacher is like that. you know Teacher dominated approach in learning, and he is just giving them information, giving them knowledge, and sharing something, what they exactly want, and subject matter gains primacy over that of the learner. So interactive approach, we can say that in interactive approach, in this approach an interactive classroom will have more student. We are just interactive, we are just we are just conducting useful with our student. So in this approach an interactive classroom will have more student talk and less teacher talk. Students are given the opportunity to interact with teacher and with other students. This is what the interactive session is there. In interactive session, both student and teacher, and they are just interacting to each other, and they just want to know something from them. So in this approach, in an interactive classroom will have more student talk or less teacher talk. So students are given the opportunity to interact with teacher and with other student. In constructivist approach means the student are expected to construct knowledge and meaning out for what they are taught by connecting them to prior experience. This is what constructivities means. The student are expected to construct knowledge, construct their ideas, and they and meaning out of what they are taught by connecting them to prior experience. They are just constructing their knowledge. Now, banking approach, the teacher deposit knowledge into the empty minds of students for students to commit to memory. Integrated approach means it makes the teacher connect what he she teaches to other lessons of the some subject, or connect his her lessons with other subject, thus making his her approach interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary. So disciplinal approach means it limits the teacher to discussing his her lessons within the boundary of his her subject. So collaborative approach means it will welcome group work, teamwork, and the partnerships and group discussion. Individualistic in discipline approach means it limit the teacher to discussing his or her lessons and within the boundary of his her. And collaborative approach means it will welcome group work and teamwork and the partnership and the group discussion. So now we can say, if we talk about the remedial teaching. So in remedial teaching, in this process where in this process Remedial teaching is the process by which students having different type of problem are giving are given extra classes or instructions so that they may accompany the good intelligent student of the class student, or learners, and may find following types of problem or difficulties in learning foreign language. So lack of motivation is also, we can say, lack of motivation, poor comprehensive power, poor or weak memory, students having short assignment span, slow in completing assignments or tasks, lack of self confidence, and having low expectation, inability to grasp knowledge and information, and mixing up things easily, and finding it difficult to understand new and abstract concept. So the unable to link the knowledge of different subject, different mental levels, styles of learning. So to overcome all these problems, remedial teachers need to design teaching activities according to the different needs of different students, and accordingly teaching method. So now what we have learned from this method, we have learned remedial teaching. So in remedial teaching is the process. This is also the process by which students having different type of problem are giving extra classes or instructions so that they may accompany the good intelligent student of the class student, or learners may find the following type of problems or difficulties in learning foreign language: lack of motivation, poor comprehensive power, poor or weak memory, students having short assignments and slow in completing assignments, lack of self-confidence, having low expectations, inability to grasp knowledge, and finding it difficult to understand new abstract, and unable to link the knowledge of different subject, different mental levels and style of learning. So to overcome all these problems, remedial teachers need to design teaching activities according to the different needs of different students, and accordingly teaching matters. So these are remedial method we have discussed here. So now, individualistic approach, it wants the individual learner to work by themselves. Direct teaching approach means the teacher directly tells or show or demonstrates what is to be taught. Indirect guided approach means the teacher guides the learner to discover things for himself, herself. The teacher facilitates the learning process by allowing the learner to be engaged in the learning process with his or her guidance. This is called indirect guided approach, not direct. This is indirect. The teacher guides the learner to discover things for himself, herself. The teacher facilitates the learning process by allowing to the learner to be engaged in the learning process with his guidance. Now, other teaching approaches cited in education literature are research-based approach, as its name implies. Teaching and learning are anchored on research findings, and whole child approach, the learning process itself, taking into account not only the academic needs of the learners but also their emotional, creative, psychological, spiritual, and development needs. Now, metacognitive approach, very well, the teaching process brings the learner to the process of thinking about thinking. The learner reflect on what he learned and on his her ways of learning. Problem based approach means, as the name implies, the teaching learning process is focused on problems. Time is spent on analyzing and solving problems. In summary, approaches vary in the degree of like teacher and learner engagement, focus, number of learners involved in the teaching learning process, as shown in the diagram below engagement, like said, we can say that teacher, learner, and engagement, and now subject matter, focus, and learner, individual, number, and their group. So now some methods are here: direct instructions and lecture method. So direct instruction is aimed as helping student acquire procedural knowledge, exercise in the performance of some tasks, and procedural knowledge refers to skills needed in the performance of a task. So some steps of the direct lecture method to employ the methodology and in teaching skills. Follow these steps, provide the and rationally demonstrate the skill, provide guided practice until mastery, check for understanding and provide feedback, and provide extended practice and transfer and access learning at the end. And this is what we call summative assessment. So now in summative assessment, the goal of summative assessment is to evaluate student learning at the end of an instructional unit by comparing it against some standard or benchmark. Summative assessment are often high stakes, which means that they have a high point value. Example of summative assessment include a midterm exam and a final project, a paper. So this is what summative assessment. In summative assessment, what we want to know, the goal of summative assessment is to evaluate student learning at the end of an instructional unit by comparing it against some standard or benchmark. Summative assessment are often high stakes, which means that they have a high point value. Examples of summative assessment include their midterm exam and their final project and a paper. If you teach facts, principles, or laws, your steps are similar with those of teaching a skill. Give a short introduction by providing, give a short, introduction by providing the rational, present to your lesson, develop the lesson by explaining, illustrating it with diagram, if appropriate, and or giving concrete examples. Give application of the lesson and check for understanding and provide feedback. This is what we call formative assessment. In formative assessment, the goal of formative assessment is to monitor student learning, to provide ongoing feedback that can be used by instructor to improve their teaching and by student to improve their learning. More specifically, formative assessment help student identify their strength and weakness and target areas that need work. Help faculty recognize where students are struggling and address problem immediately. Now, formative assessment are generally stakes, which means that they have low or no point value. Examples of formative assessment include asking students to draw a concept map in class to represent their understanding of a topic, submit one or two sentences identifying the main point of a lecture, turn in a research proposal for early feedback. So now instructional characteristics. Strategy is teacher's directed. Teacher is directed, and he or she herself can take decision, and the emphasizes is on the teaching of skill. Each step must be mastered, hence the students and gain how rather than and what it is a term procedure knowledge and taught in a step by step and fashion. It ensure the learning of the entire procedure with no step missed. So now step is lesson objectives include easily and observe behaviors that can be measured accurately. This is a form of learning through imitation, sometime termed behavior modeling, and this can also be used to teach fact. So principles and laws and guidelines for its effective use. Teaching skill, the students must be given ample time for practice. Here we are just discussing about the knowledge, guidelines and effective use of teaching. So, if we want to give them guidance and effective use of teaching, effective use of tools. So, teaching skills means, the students must be given ample time for practice. So this is a very important. If we are giving them time, sufficient time, ample time for practice, so they can, they can give their 100%. So they can they can utilize their time, they can utilize their knowledge, they can, do ample and they can use their time properly. So they must be included in the planning stage, since this technique is highly task oriented and aimed at mastery of every step. The lesson objectives are student based actually, because nowadays in present era, we are having a learner centric education. And describe the testing situation and specify the level of performance and their expected. So now, divide complex skills. So this is, a very important part, you can say important tool. Divide complex skills and understanding into sub skills or into its component steps, so they can be taught easily and with, precision. Design own strategy in teaching each skill, which will eventually contribute to the learning of the entire skills. So before, the demonstration, carefully rehearse all steps. The steps should be observed and followed. So now, assign practice for short periods of time. Then continue learning by imitating others, provide feedback and encouragement through praises. Positively motivated, the students will never get tired and practicing, be able to construct good performance based test. So teaching, declarative knowledge, fact, principles and their laws. So be sure the fact, principles, laws are, correctly, clearly and adequately explained. So use visual aids to concretize abstract principles and laws. So first of all, just illustrate some laws, some principles with concrete examples to present fact meaningfully by stating their significance and by connecting them with everyday life. So now we are just moving on demonstration method. Demonstration method is very important because we are just, demonstrating lesson. Demonstrating method is subject, the as the name implies. In the demonstration method, a teacher or an assigned student or group shows how the process is done, while the students become observer. The demonstrator is knowledgeable in preparing the approach needed according to the steps to be followed. The rest of the class becomes, focused on the activity and concentration on the subject is assured. So first of all, guidelines for its effective use. So the demonstrators must be well selected, and he she they must be skilled in operating modern equipment and proficient in undertaking scientific investigation. When planning the activities, make sure that the materials are easily available. Likewise, get prepared with possible substitute. So this is very important to get ready, with the equipment and those to be used. Demonstration should be scheduled and today and class periods. The demonstration must try the activity and several times before the real demonstration for a smooth sequencing of the steps as well as accuracy of the result. The observers must be prepared and motivated to ensure concentration throughout the activity. And so the administration must be ready, ready with on spot revision, such as alternative steps or substitute materials when needed. Arrange the observers around the demonstration area or at a distance where they will be able to observe fully what is going on. So, depending on the kind of demonstration to be undertaken, pointers or questions may be given to focus students' attention and avoid irrelevant observation. So, during the place must be quiet in order to stay the observer's attention and interest during the activity. Extreme care must be taken in performing some delicate steps. The activity must not be interrupted by unnecessary announcements or noise in the surroundings. They are allowed to take down short notes or record some data which may be analyzed after. Allow some questions which bother them during the demonstration and examination of the observed data, and all information recorded follows. So have an analysis of trends, patterns or uniform occurrence that can help in arriving at a conclusion. The solution or summary must be cooperatively undertaken by the whole class. Assess learning by way of a short test, an oral evaluation, or a performance test. To advantages, the demonstration method follows a systematic procedure. The use of expensive equipment and machines will be maximized. So these are some advantages of teaching learning. So possible wastage of time, effort, resources will be avoided since the demonstration is supposed to be well planned in advance. It will not result to trial and error learning as what happens with unplanned learning activities. The findings are reliable and accurate since the procedure has been tried before. The value of confidence is developed among the demonstrators for such hands-on demonstration. Curiosity and keen observing ability are instilled among the observers. So now indirect guided exploratory approach. Indirect instruction method is best used when the learning process is inquiry based, the result is discovery, and the learning context is a problem. This can come as inquiry method, discovery method, problem solving method, and their project method. Inquiry method means we will never be able to help children learn if we tell them everything they need to know. Rather, we must provide them with opportunities to explore, inquire, and discover new learning. The core of inquiry is a spontaneous and a self-directed exploration. So now steps in the inquiry method define the topic or introduce the question, guide students plan where and how to gather data and information, and students present findings through graph, chart, PowerPoint presentation, models, and their writing. So, instructional, characteristics, the following are commonly observed characteristics of the discovery inquiry method: investigative process such as inferring, hypothesizing, measuring, predicting, classifying, analyzing, and experimenting, formulating conclusions and generalizations are employed. The processor in gathering information is not prescribed by the teachers. So now the children are highly motivated to search, hence active participation is the best indicator of inquisitiveness. The answers arrived at are genuine and genuine and products of their own efforts. Focus questions before, during, and after are criticized after after a critical ingredient that provide direction and sustain action. So now we are just moving on outcomes of inquiry teaching. Its emphasizes is on the process of gathering and processing of information. Its dependence on first hand experience with object and phenomena occurring in the environment is certainly in agreement with the most often cited theory of Piaget, very important theory of Piaget on intellectual development. The inquiry approach, which predominantly allows some degree of freedom, develops initiative and divergent thinking. So now, a deep, sense, yes, a deep sense of responsibility is developed of when learners are left to manage their own. So, learning, be it in pursuit and of answers, mastery of content, or simply solving a problem that confronts them instantly. Educators strongly believe that fact and concept that learners discover by themselves become stored as part of their permanent learning. Experiencing success in inquiry, based discovery and lessons, and builds up the learner's feeling of confidence, participation in query activities, and learns intellectual capabilities. So now, if we talk about some objectives of remedial teaching, if we want to add in to each pupil differ from other in term of learning ability, academic standard, classroom learning, and academic performance, and each has its own in learning. The aim of teaching is to provide learning aid to pupils who lag behind their counterparts in school performance. Throughout the teaching process, teachers should provide systematic training to develop pupils and generic skills, including interpersonal relationship, communication, problem solving, self management, learning, and independent thinking, creativity, and the use of information technology. So, principles of remedial teaching means teaching preparation before preparing for the class, for the lessons. Remedial teachers should identify pupils' varied learning need as soon as possible so that may design appropriate teaching plans to facilitate pupils' effective learning. Preparing meaning learning situation. Remedial teachers should prepare meaningful learning situations, language, environment, games, or activities to provide personal learning experience for pupils and stimulate their interest and initiative in learning. So, since pupils have different characteristics in learning, teachers must devise different learning activities with the same teaching objective to develop pupils' varied abilities and skills in problem solving. Teachers must adopt a series of relevant and simple teaching activities than one long teaching activities. So now we can say how to facilitate inquiry teaching. Arrange for an ideal room setting and the arrange for an ideal room setting and choose tool and equipment that can easily be manipulated. The materials to be used or examine must land themselves easily to the process to be employed and the end product desired. The questions problem to be answered should originate from the learners, followed by the formulation by hypothesis. The procedure should likewise be planned by them at the completion of the activity, require an evaluation of the step undertaken as to its effectiveness and the clarity of the results. Above all, the teacher himself herself should internalize his her changed role to that of a guide, facilitator, and counselor rather than the traditional authority who not only determines the material to be learned but also dictates how it should be learned. Problem solving method means, is a teaching strategy that employs the scientific method in searching for information. The five basic steps of scientific method or investigatory process are, sensing, defining the problem, formulating hypotheses, and testing the likely hypothesis, and analysis, interpretation, and evaluation of evidence, formulating conclusion. And now, some advantages. This method is most effective in developing skill is, employing the science process. The scientific method can likewise be used effectively in other non-science objects. The students' active involvement resulting in meaningful experiences serve as a strong motivation to follow the scientific procedure in future undertaking. Problem solving develops higher level thinking skills. A keen sense of responsibility and resourcefulness are developed, which are much needed ingredients for independent study. The students become appreciative and grateful for the achievement of scientists. Critical thinking, open mindedness, and wise judgment are among scientific attitude and values included inculcated through competence in the scientific method. The student learn to accept the opinions and evidence shared by others. So guidelines for its effectiveness use provide sufficient training in defining and stating the problem in a clear and concise manner. Make sure that the problem to be solved fits the age, interest, and the skills of the students. Group the students and follow each one to share in the tasks to be performed and guide them at every step by asking and leading questions in case of in case in case in case of in case of niche. So now we can say that guidelines for its effective use of language is that provide clear instruction, suitable teaching approaches, and enhance learning interest and motivation, and summarize the main point, encourage individual pupils attention. First of all, pupils will learning if difficulties are less competent in understanding written language. Therefore, remedial teachers should give learners short and clear instruction to avoid confusion. Suitable teaching, like teachers may teach, suitable teaching may teach, like that, ideas and through meaningful and repeated illustrations and examples. Teachers should encourage pupils should use information technology, illustrations, and all the teaching resources available to help pupils understand the main points, enhance learning interest and motivation. Teachers should adopt to the curriculum to meet the needs of pupils with less pupil in the teachers can design interesting activities and coupled with reward scheme to stimulate pupils' interest and summarize the main point during course of teaching. And teachers should always summarize the main points in teaching and write the key phrases on the board to enhance pupils' audio and visual memories. Encourage pupil active participation in classroom activities. Pupils with learning difficulties usually lack self-confidence and more passive in class. So they seldom ask questions or express their views. Remedial teachers should encourage active participation in the classroom activities, individual pupils' attention. Pupils may face different problems in their studies, therefore, teachers should observe the learning process of individual pupils in class. Whenever necessary, they should provide individualized remedial teaching before and after class, during recess or lunchtime. Recess time, lunchtime, teachers should take note of the common errors of pupils and deliver the correct concept and knowledge to them promptly. So get ready with the substitutional for material which may not be available. The emphasis is on the procedure and the process employed rather than on the product. The development of skills and attitudes takes priority over knowledge. Involve the students in determining the criteria with which they will be evaluated. So, what we have covered from this method, so we have covered lot of things, lot of material from this class. So, we have done some, different approaches and their method and some methods and we have discussed teaching approaches and strategy method and some different approaches, learner centers and teacher center approaches. And also we have covered some different approaches. Now constructive part and integrated approach, disciplinary collaborative approach, individual direct teaching, indirect guided and research and problem based approaches and direct method, indirect method. All these points we have covered. Formative formative method, summative method, and some strategy, teaching skills, some laws, demonstration part, advantages, inquiry method, and characteristics, and problem solving behavior, problem solving method, and these all points we have covered here. Thank you. In next class we will discuss some other approaches also, direct method, some indirect method, remedial teaching, and why four skills are very important in English language. And first of all, listening and speaking and reading, writing. We will discuss four skills in next class. So these four skills are very important. So now we are just concluding all these things here. good. We know many things, but I do not know everything.